Welcome back to the sewing room. I'm Lara, and today I want to talk to you about 3 more things you should troubleshoot or consider if you're having some tension issues with your machine. I've already done part 1 and part 2. This is part 3, and we're mostly going to be talking about the bobbin area. So let's get started. Now, the first things you'll want to check are your actual bobbins. Now, there's a couple of different styles of bobbin, but you do want to be sure that you have the exact kind made to work with your machine. There are more than this kinds, but these are just the 2 that I think are maybe the most common. It's a very flat one. This is sometimes called a class 15. Usually metal, although it can be plastic. And this is a class 66, which is also pretty common. Let's see if I can get a real close-up on this. Come on. Too close. Okay, so superficially it looks very similar to the other one. It's not super enormous, it's not super tiny, it's a bobbin, but look very closely and you'll see that it has almost a spaceship curve on the edges. So you want to be sure that if you have this kind of bobbin for your machine, that you have this kind of bobbin for your machine and not that kind of bobbin for your machine. You want to make sure you're using the correct bobbin. Also, is your bobbin in good shape? The metal ones hold up really well. They last a really long time, especially if you're careful not to ever drop them. You do want to inspect them every once in a while and make sure everything looks still square, the top and bottom are nice and parallel, etc. For the plastic ones, they do eventually kind of show wear. And you can see that on this guy. And I'm going to set to make sure my focus is good. This bobbin is still good, but it's starting to show a little bit of stress. You can kind of see that it doesn't look completely brand new anymore. It just has a little wear, whereas this one is in a little bit better condition. So again, whoa. Yeah, so always be careful not to drop your bobbin. Thankfully that was onto carpet, so I think we will be okay. But this isn't a bad bobbin, but it's something to keep an eye on if the machine starts sewing a little funny. Of course, usual first aid, change the needle, make sure it's clean, etc., etc. But then occasionally I will kind of take a bobbin, and if it looks a little suspicious, I'll set it to the side, try a different bobbin, and if I get a better result, I would consider getting rid of this bobbin. You also want to be careful not to fill plastic bobbins too full. I have been really enthusiastic when I was filling a bobbin with this machine, and I have literally busted a bobbin open, like the top just flew right off. So I do like to slightly underfill these guys just to make sure they last a little bit longer. If you have a touch and sew machine, they have a very unusual bobbin. They were only made for this style of machine. The white lines indicate how much thread is on the bobbin, and they're really interesting in that they're not very big at all, but they wind right in the machine, which, for touch and sew enthusiasts, it's kind of a fun feature. And the bobbins are actually also designed to be taken apart. You can untwist it and get the thread out, which is great for if you're frequently changing colors and you want to start with a fresh bobbin, and you always do want to start with a fresh bobbin. You can open that right up. I'm not going to open it for you today because I do feel there's a limited number of openings these bobbins have. So just take my word for it that you can untwist this and take it off if you want to. All right, we've established we want to make sure we're using the right bobbin and that the bobbin is in good shape. But also when you're winding your bobbin, keep an eye on it and make sure that it is winding evenly. What that means is not more thread on the top than on the bottom. You start to see kind of a cone or a reverse cone shape if your bobbin isn't winding correctly. And that may require an adjustment to your winding apparatus on your machine. But just keep an eye on that, because if you have a poorly wound bobbin that's not winding evenly, it's not going to sew very well either. So if that's happening to you, stop. Take a look, maybe start over, and just make sure you have a well-wound bobbin for your sewing. Once you've established that your bobbin is in good shape and well wound and ready to go, then the next step is inserting it, right? So there's two basic classes of bobbin. There's horizontal and vertical. This is a horizontal machine. This is a Singer 328K, and it's also sometimes called a drop-in bobbin. And in this case, this machine, the bobbin likes to go in with the tail to the left of the bobbin, and then you do need to hook it through. It has a little channel here, which it's hard to do with my camera in the way, but there we go. A little more of a close-up. You want to feel a little tension once you have your bobbin in place, and you want to see it unwinding in a counterclockwise direction. Now, not every machine likes its bobbin in the same way. Some machines go the other way, and honestly, I have no way to tell you which is which unless you look at the manual for your machine. That's going to be your best bet for how to insert your bobbin properly. Inserting the bobbin properly is very important, so definitely find your manual so that you can make sure you're doing it correctly. Please ignore my mess. I do actually sew in here, and I was sewing this morning. But the other style of machine is typically going to be a vertical bobbin, and vertical bobbin machines come in different shapes and sizes, but you'll know it's vertical because when the bobbin is in the machine, it's vertical. It's either facing this way or facing this way. I suppose it could be backwards, but I've only seen these two ways. But once you get it out, you do have to take out the whole case to get it out. So here's the case side. And there's the bobbin where you can see it. Just as with the horizontal machine, the bobbin, in theory, can go one of two ways, but only one is correct. For this machine, the bobbin likes to go in with the thread coming over the top of the bobbin. And sorry, my focus is moving around. Once you have that in, then you can loop it around and catch it, and there it is. Bobbin cases, both vertical and horizontal, will often have a little screw, sometimes two, which you can see right there, where it is possible to adjust the bobbin tension, but that is, in my opinion, an absolute last resort. I want everything else on the machine to be absolutely picture perfect. Again, clean, new needle, fabric that's not too wonky, just everything and its best possible bet to see if this is what really needs to be adjusted, because adjustments on your tension on your bobbin are very fine. So even a very small change can make a big difference. And also, unfortunately, if you screw it down too tight, you can kind of ruin it. So technically those screws are there and you can adjust it, but make sure everything is absolute tippity top. Do this as absolute last resort. And again, check your manual to see what you're even supposed to be doing and what adjustment would actually help the situation that you are in. All right, if you have a machine that can do either straight stitching or zigzag stitching, and you have a special kind of accessory, you may be able to set up your machine for success if the only stitching you plan on doing for this particular project is just straight stitching. No zigzags, nothing fancy, no hem stitch, really just straight stitches. Then your machine may have an accessory that will make your life a lot easier and make your machine actually sew better for that kind of project. So the first thing I'm going to do, this machine can do, you can see it has an adjustment here, so it can do zigzag. So I'm going to put that to 0, which means no zigzag. That's just going to be straight stitching. And then I'm going to dig through my accessory box and look for the parts I need to change to switch this machine over to just a straight stitch machine. Now, there's nothing stopping me from moving this lever even when I have the machine set for straight stitching. And if I do that, at the least, it's going to break a needle. And at the worst, it could really hurt the machine. So whenever I do this, the very first thing I do is I add some sort of note or tape or something here so that I know not to touch that lever until I change the machine back. All right, so today I'm just going to put a Wonder Clip right on that lever. It doesn't actually stop me from using it, but it might make you think, hey, why is that there? Before I move this. So, just give yourself some reminder so that you don't accidentally move this lever until you've changed anything. And this machine also has a left, right, and center option. I do want to leave that in center, but I don't touch this nearly as often as this, so I'm not going to get too anxious about marking that off. All right, I'm really lucky I have the full accessory box for this machine. But even if you don't, you can actually buy replacement parts for this kind of machine. Well, really almost any machine. But this one, in my little box of tricks, I do have the straight stitch needle plate, which you can tell is different from the regular needle plate. The regular needle plate has a wider opening here. So I'm going to start by changing that. This machine is a little funny. You do just kind of yank on it. There are some that are more sophisticated, but it works. Again, there's my kind of needs a little love. Here's my regular plate. See the bigger hole? And then the different plate is just teeny tiny little hole. And it goes in like this. Voila. All right, so that's fabulous. And then number 2, I'm going to change the foot. I'm going to move the camera so you can actually see that better. All right, so this style, and it's actually very common, has a little screw right here, and sometimes I do like to take a little screwdriver. There we go. Very exciting. And this is a straight stitch foot. Sometimes called a 1/4 inch foot, because some people find it easier to sew a 1/4 inch with this style of foot compared to all-purpose, or not dropping it, all-purpose, or also zigzag foot. This is the foot you're going to use for almost everything. But this is the foot that's really helpful if you want really super accurate seams where you can see better when you're sewing, and also for if you have a fabric that's just not playing well with your machine, sometimes this will be the part of what helps you fix that situation. And standard foot, it's right on there. Oh, come on, you. Okay. Some things are actually harder to do standing up because you're not in your usual spot. All that lovely muscle memory you have saved up just is not available. Voila, nice and tight, ready to sew. And first thing I do, whenever I change even just the foot on a machine, even before I rethread the needle, is I take my hand wheel and I turn it just to make sure everything lines up okay. I didn't hear anything, I didn't feel anything, everything went nice and smooth, so now I'm more confident, ready to thread and start sewing. Now, if you have a Singer Touch and Sew, which is a machine I've been very clear I absolutely love, I use mine all the time, it actually has 3 different needle plates, so you want to be kind of careful that you're using the one you mean to use. There's the standard, which is in right now. There is the straight stitch, which looks like that. And then this machine can also do a chain stitch. So basically, they're great for if you're going to baste or lots of other things, but it's mainly for basting. And that has a special plate which looks like this from the front, like that from the back. It's a fantastic feature, but if you have this plate installed and you're trying to sew regular sewing without the chain stitch attachments and other adjustments of the machine, you're going to have a bad time. The machine is not going to sew well. So just be careful. Don't lose this, don't let it fall, don't break it. They're very precious and nice, but be sure to only use it when you mean to use it. If you have a newer machine than this, or if you've changed the foot to a snap-on foot, which is what this is. So zoom in a little bit. That's a snap-on foot shank. And what that means is your foot attaches that quickly. Now I don't actually have a straight stitch foot for this style of machine. But just so you know, it looks the same. It still has basically the two little forks coming out, and it's a very narrow looking foot. This is a zipper foot. But just so you know, if you have a snap-on, snap-off like that, then your attitude and your changes and everything else about using the straight stitch foot is the same. It's just a lot faster for you to change your foot. And these are so standard, they almost always come with the machine if you have any attachments at all. So dig around, look. This is a zipper foot, so it won't look exactly like this. It'll look like the other one did. It'll have the two little prongs. One's a little smaller than the other. But take a look in your accessories box on your machine and see if you maybe have one and don't know about it.